The Heat made a move on Wednesday, bringing back one of their own rotation players from last season, the high-flying Caleb Martin. What's next for Caleb, and can he become a starting-level player for Miami? And what's the latest on Donovan Mitchell? Could he be on the verge of demanding a trade out of Utah? We break it all down on today's edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Thursday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However, you may be watching or listening on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. We're excited to talk about Caleb Martin coming back to the Miami Heat, signing a 3-year deal worth approximately $20.5 million. Those were the announced terms per various sources. The Heat themselves have not made the deal official, or they haven't posted anything publicly about it, at least not through media or anything else. But it seems like that's likely a good done deal. Caleb wanted to be back with the Miami Heat, and he's back. This is a clip from his post-game press conference regarding his views on coming back to Miami.
Being open-minded, but I want to be here. You know what I mean? I've got better here, and I believe I'll get better here. Obviously, I want the situation just want a great situation no matter what. But I just think that how close I've gotten with the guys and the people here, and how much better and more confident I've been here. And I feel like my team and my staff believes in me and believes that I'm going to get better here. So obviously, being open-minded is going to free agency. Like, you know, have to be, and it's my first experience with that. But I want to be here. I love being here. I want to be here. So that's all I got on my mind right now until I see what happens or whatever type of experience I'm going to get in free agency. So.
Well, he's here. He loves being here. That's pretty apparent. So he chose to come back here. I'm not sure what the market was like for a player like him. His brother commanding slightly more in a return to the Charlotte Hornets. So Caleb, probably as a young wing player, age 26, almost 27, still could have gotten some money, showed some improvement last year, as he mentioned in that clip, as a role player that basically was let go by the Charlotte Hornets. They didn't believe in his ability to stick around that roster. They had made some moves themselves. They thought they were going to be positioning themselves for a playoff seeding. That didn't quite work out for them. They kept the other Martin brother, Cody. Caleb wound up becoming a free agent, chose to come with Miami, and emerged as a pretty solid rotation player, playing in 60 games, averaging almost 10 points per game, 9.2 points per game to be exact. Shot 41.3% from three-point range, a two-way contract that he had signed before the start of the season. And then midway through the year, it became very apparent to us and everybody else that had watched him play for any stretch of time that he was deserving of a full-time contract. And in fact, his contract was converted right before the playoffs. He did have some nice appearances here and there throughout the playoffs, but he was kind of in and out of the rotation, suffered through some injuries that kind of sapped him of some of that explosiveness. There was still there, obviously, just because he's such a high-flying athletic player, but overall, he just wasn't quite as impactful after he came back from injury. But overall, Wes, thoughts on the acquisition of Caleb Martin?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Heat get him at a discount, right? I mean, you mentioned all this stuff. What a great story. One of the best stories in the NBA. Gets waived, gets separated from his brother for the first time in their legit basketball playing careers dating back to college. Cody re-signs with Charlotte on a 4-year, $32 million deal. Caleb gets the 3-year, $20.5 million deal. And basically, Charlotte had the extent of their full mid-level exception available because they're not worried about the hard cap the same way that Miami is. So, the Caleb's market was a little bit more slow developing. They extended the qualifying offer to him, making him a restricted free agent. Nobody was going to go to this extent on that. And Miami gives him basically what they could give him. So Caleb not making as much as his twin brother, but, situations, it's such an interesting way kind of to look at the way that the league really does work. It's not what you necessarily can make. It's just, or what you're worth. It's what you can earn and what kind of situation you're in and what your leverage is. And with PJ Tucker, he was able to get the full mid-level exception elsewhere. He took it with Philadelphia. And with Miami, they were able to offer him Caleb, what was remaining, or their taxpayer mid-level exception, which comes out on an average of $6.8 million a season. It's the I want to be in Miami deal. I want to be here deal. That's what Caleb Martin is. He kind of gave up a little bit of leverage in that end of season press conference saying, yeah, I really, really want to be here, all these other things, and I really want to be here. The other thing that stood out from that press conference was the fact that he believes that he can get better in Miami. It's not just because he loves Miami and this is his NBA home, but he truly feels that coming up from that two-way contract like you were talking about and getting into the rotation, becoming a playoff rotation player, he truly believes that there's still room for him to get better. He's 26 years old. The other signings that Miami made, Victor Oladipo on a 1-year, $11 million tradable deal, Dwayne Dedmon on a 2-year, $4.5 million a year type of tradable deal. This is not, I don't think, what the Heat are looking at as a tradable deal. Of course, when he's eligible to get traded in mid-December, anything can happen, but they locked this guy up for 3 more years as opposed to the Oladipo and the Dedmon contracts. Those guys are not locked up long-term. Caleb Martin is at a pretty decent rate, again, $6.8 million a year on average. And so they believe too, just like Caleb Martin does, that Caleb Martin can get better. It'll be interesting to see where his career goes, but he's under contract now until he's 29 years old. So this is his prime, right? This is his basketball prime.
Yeah, he said it, and he's absolutely right. He got better here. Like, he's already taken that leap. He's shown them the kind of growth that they're looking for that they normally don't get out of development players right away. Like, he was such a success story. Like, think about what Max Strus had to take a couple of years. Gabe Vincent took a couple of seasons in order for him to get to the point now where we can say, oh, he's a quality level player. Caleb Martin, obviously with more experience overall, but still he showed that he could be an improving player and that he's willing to do the work. And I think there's a high level of respect from the Heat front office for what Caleb was able to produce. They like him. He talked about the fit in the locker room. I think that's certainly a plus in his favor. And now they recognize that he has potential too, that he can continue to build on the foundation of what last year. So maybe
and not to move off too quickly from the story, but I think it's such a great story that it's worth spending more time on. This guy was almost out of the league, and that's not an exaggeration. He got waived by Charlotte.
Yeah.
And I guess the league almost felt like, well, we have enough Martin brothers in the league, and that might have just been one with Cody Martin, who stayed with the Hornets. And this guy was looking at training camp deals. Maybe that could lead to a two-way contract in other places like Milwaukee and Portland and these other teams. He took a tryout with the Miami Heat. They asked him to come back the next day for another tryout. And a lot of NBA players have been like, no, I already gave you the one tryout. Make a decision on me or not, especially because Caleb felt like that first tryout went really well. But he said, you know what? I'm going to go back. And he did. And Miami loved everything that he showed in those 2 workouts. They loved his personality, and they're betting. And now they're paying for what they believe is a player who has that work ethic to get better. And there's a lot to like there. He's 6'6", 6'7", really high flyer athlete, a dynamic athlete overall. You and I talk about this all the time. It was like every game you could put money on it. There will be there's going to be a series every game where Caleb Martin jumps a passing lane, gets a steal, and then dunks in transition. It happened almost every single night that Caleb Martin was playing. And I think there's a lot to go. Like, he projects as a 3-and-D type of player. You can never have enough of those kinds of guys on an NBA roster. I guess what comes next is, what is his ceiling? How much better can he get? And what kind of role are we looking at for Caleb Martin next year, now that he's getting paid $6 million plus a season versus, hey, everything's icing on the cake when you're just outperforming a 2-way contract?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that in the next segment before we get into the latest regarding Donovan Mitchell, who might be on the verge of asking for a trade out of Utah. But just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible to keep track of what parts they might have at your local chain auto parts store. They have their warehouse that they order parts from. Maybe they have something there that you're looking for. Maybe you go into a traditional chain storefront and you ask the person behind the counter what to get for your car. Maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation. You're not quite sure what. You feel like you're being price gouged. It sucks. You don't want to go through that. Why bother going through all that? Well, they're just going to look up something on their computer, the same computer that you have access to at home or in your pocket, which means you've got access to rockauto.com, a family-owned business that's been serving auto parts customers online for 20 plus years. You know what you're getting from them. Again, long-term service and the same low prices for everybody, whether you're a do-it-yourself or a full-time auto mechanic. RockAuto.com is the value that you're looking for. Their website's so easy to use. Just a few clicks, you get everything you need delivered directly and safely to your door. So go to RockAuto.com right now. Go to the section that says, how'd you hear about us? Find all the parts that you're looking for your car or truck, and then write the phrase locked on so they know we sent you. It's amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's RockAuto.com. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. And just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskAllHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. We want to hear from you throughout this offseason. So many of you have sent in questions, comments about free agency, potential trades, etc. We'd love to hear that kind of feedback. So make sure that you subscribe to the show and send us a message. But here we are talking about Caleb Martin, because he just signed that 3-year, nearly $21 million deal. As you mentioned, on the verge of going to China or continuing his professional career elsewhere. Instead, he comes to Miami, and now he's become a clear rotation player, an impactful player, one that is always going to be making the memorable play, whether it's on offense or defense or both. And now, what's next for him? Because I think there's still obviously room for him to grow.
Yeah.
The three-point shooting, I don't know if that's sustainable, right? I think that's a concern, is whether or not he can continue to shoot as lights out as he did throughout most of the regular season. The athleticism, we assume, is still going to be there. We'd like a little bit more consistency on that jump shot. I think there's also some question about ball handling. You never want him this. I mean, if he's on the wing or in a corner and he's got a clear lane, yes, that's clear for two. Like, that's a clear 2-point shot for him, because he's just going to be able to fly over anybody, whether it's Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic or anybody in between. He's going to be able to dunk on them, and that's just the reality of who he is as a player. But aside from that, you want him to be able to have a little bit more of an offensive repertoire than just attacking the basket, and a little bit more polish, especially when it comes to his ball handling ability. But I think the big question overall, and it's one that you posed on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, is whether or not Caleb Martin could assume a starting role with his team next year. Because I think that's a huge question for somebody, again, with a lack of power forward options on this Miami Heat roster currently. There's a need to put somebody in that starting lineup, and I'm not sure if Caleb is the right response or the right answer for that. But what do you think? Do you think he can start at power forward for the Heat?
It's not ideal. No, I think ultimately you want Caleb Martin as a small forward. I think that's his role, a 3-and-D style small forward. All the things that you're talking about him getting better at, right? More consistent outside jumper, get better defensively. You can always get better defensively. Maybe get a little bit more dynamic off the dribble, but he's not a guy that I'm looking at that I want taking mid-range shots or anything like that. I think ultimately Caleb Martin's probably best position is just a 3-and-D wing who comes in and is just sort of the glue in a lineup, and that's great at $6+ million a season. That's exactly what you're kind of looking for. But part of that too is, all right, what do the Heat look at him as? I think they would prefer that Caleb Martin is a small forward, but it might get to the point where you have to play him at power forward, because I don't know what the other option is at this point, right? I don't think that Omer Yurtseven is ready to start and then push Bam Adebayo to the 4. I don't know that that's the way to go. I don't know that going super small and playing Jimmy at the 4 and somebody like Victor Oladipo or Tyler Herro adding one of those guys into the starting lineup. Now you're just being really, really small, especially considering how small Bam already is as a starting center. So it's tough, but I don't really know what the other alternative is. The hard part in regards to Caleb is if you were talking about what his development is between age 26 and age 29, the span of this contract, are you developing him as a out of position, super small ball power forward, or are you developing him as what he should be, a 3, a wing player, a perimeter oriented player? Because he's not a front court player.
Right.
But if you have to develop him there, then we're talking about other things that he needs to develop. Strength, front court defensive positioning, post defense, all these other things that aren't really part of his game now.
Right.
Now you're trying to work that stuff up, versus if you're playing him as a perimeter oriented player, then you could sort of just focus on what it is that he does best, which is, all right, let's get that 3 to continue to be more consistent. He took a big leap last year in that regard. And then obviously all the other stuff that we've been talking about.
Yeah. You were talking about the role there as a glue guy, the occasional spot up 3, attacking the basket, not necessarily creating plays for others, because that's not neither his strength, nor is that necessarily a role that he should be filling. And you talked about that, and I'm hearing you're talking about it. I'm thinking, oh, we had a guy like that. His name was PJ Tucker. But the difference between Tucker and being able to fill that spot and occasionally being able to guard some of those bigger players,
Right.
well, a lot of strength, a lot of weight, a lot of experience under his
Yes.
belt, and the ability to be able to hold his own there. Like, he's a
I've
guy who
seen some
could match
stuff
up.
about how like Caleb is the same height as PJ Tucker, so why don't you just have him play? And even Caleb Martin has talked about in the past, he's trying to learn a lot from PJ Tucker, and there was some
Sure.
quotes and stuff making the rounds. Caleb Martin is not nearly as strong as PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker was able to play center in Houston because he's freakishly
Years
strong
ago.
for his size. Caleb Martin is
Yeah.
not that. He's a lot of other things that PJ Tucker wasn't. PJ Tucker's
Right.
not playing above the rim. Caleb
No.
Martin is, but Caleb Martin does not have that old man strength the way that PJ Tucker had. He shouldn't be playing the four.
No, he's not the right option for that. But I think it's a great deal. Like, I think a lot of people are kind of underwhelmed, especially in light and context of Donovan Mitchell or Kevin Durant,
Right.
superstar X. But the reality is that you need this kind of depth, and especially when you look at what Miami went through last season with so many injuries to key players, Bam, Jimmy, Kyle, and certainly the possibility of that happening again next season. It was guys like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, everybody else who kind of stepped up at various points throughout the regular season that led Miami to the first seed in the Eastern Conference. And so
Yeah.
bringing him back with that kind of potential, with a chance to continue to grow and develop, Miami believes in him. He believes in Miami, and that's a perfect fit. To bring a guy back that wants to be here, I think it's always going to be a good move, especially because I think in overall, again, when you step outside the context of everything else that's happening or even other free agents, it's a good value for what he brings to the table. So I think it's a great move. And
Yeah, the other part of it too is that unlike guys like Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, Caleb Martin is an elite athlete. And you and I have talked about this going into the draft, where it's like, I think one of the biggest needs for this Heat team is just elite level athleticism and elite kind of, that kind of stuff. And
right.
if you had lost Caleb Martin, you're losing one of the best athletes, I
Yeah,
think, on the team.
for
And
sure.
so, Max is very good at a lot of things. Gabe is really good at a lot of things. But Caleb Martin they are not elite athletes. Caleb Martin is. And now you get to keep that guy. And they obviously think that athleticism still leaves an untapped ceiling. What's the best case scenario for Caleb Martin over the next 3 years? Like, what kind of player, if you could find like a player comp, would
Ooh.
you kind of compare him to? I'm kind of having a hard time thinking of one.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Just like that energy wing off the bench, and usually those kinds of guys, the ones that stand out in memory, are like big time scorers or something like that. And I'm
Right.
trying to figure out who
Like,
that could
I'm
be.
thinking like a smaller Otto Porter kind of guy who's just knocking down threes from his
Mm,
spots, playing good
yeah,
defense, not trying to do too much. Otto Porter had a lot of his athleticism sucked away from the injuries and stuff, but
sure.
as long as that doesn't happen to Caleb, he should obviously keep that. I don't know.
Dorian
It's just
Finney-Smith, something like that.
a
I
guy
know
like
that's
that, yeah. Dorian Finney-Smith can play some. He plays some four for Dallas. Obviously, look, Caleb Martin played 20, according to Basketball Reference, 22% of his reps last year were at power forward. His on-off numbers at that spot are really good, but he was
mm,
playing a lot of those minutes next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo too. So you could argue that like Jimmy was really guarding other fours and stuff like that. So again, going back to like where it is that Caleb is going to play, if nothing else changes for Miami right now, and they have 14 guys under contract, I'm including Udonis Haslem. He's not under contract yet, but he'll be back for his 20th season. Unless they fill out that 15th spot with a legit power forward, we could get to the situation where it is Caleb Martin in that starting five. Again, not ideal,
right.
but I just don't know what the other options are. Jovic isn't ready yet. And we
Duncan
listed some of the
Robinson
other
in the
names that
middle.
just doesn't make sense. Yeah, Duncan
Yeah,
Robinson doesn't make sense there. So, and
and
like
there's not a lot of options outside of whatever's on the Miami Heat roster too, and I think that's something that we have to consider. Like, now we're at a point, you Isaiah Roby got picked up
yeah,
last Tuesday. There's names coming off the board every day, like smaller names, obviously at this point, not much left. So let's go through them real quickly. We got
yeah,
LaMarcus Aldridge, who faced retirement with the Brooklyn Nets because of a severe heart issue,
right,
chose to
right.
come back, wasn't really playing much. Carmelo Anthony is always a possibility, still a competent scorer. We had a question sent in via email about whether or not the Heat should look at him. Obviously, there's a connection between Kyle and Jimmy there. They were Olympian teammates together. He's a proven veteran. Is he a
Carmelo
guy
can
who?
knock down the corner three at an elite clip. That would be good, but defensively,
Yeah,
very, very much not good. I don't know that that's the best option.
Juancho Hernan Gomez has, some possibility. I think a lot of the hype is based on the new movie,
Hollywood star, yeah.
the the
Hustle.
possibility of him, Hustle from Netflix there, starring Adam Sandler and Juancho. I'd like it. I guess it's he's younger, so I mean, there's
Mhm.
some possibility there. He
Stretch
can shoot
four
the three.
potential. Yeah.
He's a bigger like if you're like he's another one of those guys that's just been kind of fluttering around the
Mhm.
league. Again, if you want to take a chance at a young project, I don't see
I've
why you
I've
wouldn't
always
bring.
kinda liked him outside of Hustle too, like, it's not
Yeah,
just, like, the Hollywood stardom now for him, like, I've always
yeah,
sorta liked his game. I
yeah,
wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Juancho or
yeah.
Gomez. A couple other guys, Markieff Morris, like, do you
He's
just
not
bring him
coming back.
back? I don't know. At
He's
the
not coming
minimum,
back.
like,
Yeah,
it
I keep thinking that there was a sense of like a broken trust there from like
sure,
maybe
yeah,
Miami was overprotective of a player that was facing what could have been a life-threatening injury, and Marquise just I want to play, like I want to be a
yeah,
part of
yeah.
this. And then once he's finally cleared to play, he doesn't really get a lot of opportunity there. And there were moments there during some playoff stretches where you could have used his ability to knock down the mid-range jumper, et cetera, and yet he didn't get that playing time. So
I
I
just don't
wonder whether
know,
or not, yeah,
do either party have better options at this point? If it's Markieff Morris not being in the league or coming back to the Heat, like,
yeah,
he's still not signed for a reason.
yeah,
Um, Eric Paschall could be interesting. It might be a
that's a
little
name,
too
right?
on the nose
Yeah,
for Miami to go out and sign Paschall. He couldn't really crack the rotation a whole lot for Utah last year.
yeah.
Had a really strong rookie year for Golden State during their
Yeah,
really
you
bad
saw him up
year.
close. You saw him
But
up close. You
I
know what
like
his
him. I
game.
think
Yeah,
like PJ, old man strength, really like one of the strongest players on the Warriors the year that I covered him. He's really, really powerful, but defensively, there's a lot of work to do on that end.
but he'll get better,
Offensively,
right? He gets
I,
he gets the body weight down, whatever. Put him in heat shape. He could
the
take
foot
that
speed
career to
is
the.
tough. He's not very switchable. Um,
But
I
PJ's
don't know,
slow too, right? Like I mean, PJ was slow, especially at this point in his
but
career,
his
and
footwork
still,
was good, and it
yeah,
took him a long time to get there. I just don't know if you're the Heat and you're looking for a guy who could. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about other developmental projects. We're looking for a starter. You know? And I don't know
yeah.
that Eric Paschall is there yet. But again, there's not great options out there. So maybe it's worth a flyer. And if Donovan Mitchell sees Eric Paschall in Miami, maybe that matters to him.
Paul Millsap, Blake Griffin. Again, you brought up Morris. So that's basically it. It's a pretty
Yeah.
thin market, and whoever's left on the table really isn't much of an option. Of course, there's always a trade for John Collins, or Jay Crowder, or somebody else, and
I don't
maybe
see any of
if
that. I don't see either of those happening. I know
yeah,
that Heat Twitter is like, just do that. And it's like, all right, tell me what the deal is that makes any sense that doesn't cost Miami a draft pick that they want to try to use for a star. Because that's what they're doing, right? This is the first real move they did. And getting Caleb Martin is like the first real non-re-signing Oladipo and Dedmon to short-term deals that you could trade later. This is their first thing that they've really done all offseason that is outside of the great whale chase that they're obviously taking part in here.
well, speaking of the great whale, perhaps there's one in Utah, and he might not be happy with the quality of the water out there based on a recent tweet. So we'll talk about that in the next segment. But before we do that, from the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given coconut brownie chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, the coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor you love, and a delicious chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. That sounds pretty good. But stop drooling and listen. They're good for you too. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. Coconut brownie chunk puffs are only here for a limited time. So go to built.com right now and make sure you don't miss out. They're going fast because they taste amazing. All Built bars are made with collagen protein, which means your body absorbs them more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. The best part about Built Puffs is, of course, that they taste amazing, but you can enjoy them guilt-free because they're actually good for you. They're the perfect treat, perfect when you got a craving, when you need to satisfy your sweet tooth, or if you need a quick, healthy snack. They're an excellent source of protein. So go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15 and you get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off, but only if you go to built.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you can continue to get great coverage for the team that you know and love better than anybody. That's the Miami Heat. We're going to be traveling to Las Vegas tomorrow so we can watch the team up close. Hopefully, we'll have some great interviews lined up for you while we're there, as well as some reporting regarding Nikola Jovic and some of the interesting nickname suggestions that we've been getting via YouTube. So keep those coming in. Have you seen any that you particularly like? Aside
Diet
from
Cola. People are coming at me with Diet Cola.
that's a good
Yeah,
one.
there's been a few good ones. There's been a few good ones.
Yeah, keep them coming. We want to hear from you. But one thing that we do also want to talk about as we're kind of reading the tea leaves in free agency here and offseason possibilities, Donovan Mitchell sending out one of those kind of tweets that you never
It's
know what they
subtweet
mean.
season, baby. Between him and Jeannie Buss, it's subtweet season.
That's one of the power forward options we didn't talk about, LeBron James, right? We could always
Yeah,
bring
just
him
trade
back.
for him. Duncan Robinson for LeBron, straight up. Who says no?
You might have to throw in Yurt 7, and that would probably alienate half the fan base. But
Yeah. Heat fans don't want that.
So, as far as Donovan Mitchell is concerned, it looks like he's not he's not happy with something. The exact wording of the tweet, I'm paraphrasing here, but
It's
something along the lines of,
build you up to tear you down. That was the tweet. Build
That's
you
it.
up to tear you down.
Not
So,
not anybody in particular, just something gets built up and something gets torn down.
well, I don't know. Is you the Utah Jazz in this case? Because apparently, according to Brian Windhorst, that he went to the front office after they traded Rudy Gobert and Royce O'Neal and was like, "What's up? What's going on? Where are we going with this?" Like, I guess he's questioning the direction of the organization now, which makes sense because
Absolutely.
you tell me who's starting for the Jazz other than Donovan Mitchell. It's not a great group of guys that they've got left over. So, is build you up to tear you down? Did they build up the Jazz just to tear down the Jazz? And if he is questioning the direction of the franchise, could this lead Donovan Mitchell to maybe making a little bit of trouble for them and requesting a trade? Because we've heard the reporting now that Danny Ainge is not quick to move off of Donovan Mitchell. Some other reporting that says it will take a Godfather-like offer to get Donovan Mitchell, just like it took to get Rudy Gobert. But that's Danny Ainge's stance. What's Donovan Mitchell's stance? And right now, it doesn't look very happy.
No, and I can't see why it would. Like, we've made this point before. Like, he's a young star, wants to get better. If there was a complaint between him and Rudy Gobert and the lack of fit there, that Gobert was basically unplayable. Yet a lot of that was because of the perimeter defense, a big part of which was Donovan's contribution or lack thereof in that field. But they were first round exit. That's been a problem. They can't seem to get over the hump, whether it's a roster building or just things in general. He wants to succeed, and he's been pretty obvious about that. He's been very vocal about wanting to win, wanting to succeed. Part of that makes him such an appealing option for Miami. And now all of a sudden, you get the coach in theory that you probably want, where they brought in that first year head coach. You move on from Rudy, and you go to yourself, well, I didn't get along with Rudy as well as people might have liked, but he was a good defensive player. He was a winner. He did help in many regards. But then all of a sudden you trade away Royce O'Neal too, one of your friends on the team. And then you trade away Eric Pascal, or you cut him.
Yeah, you cut him.
Yeah. Yeah, another one of your clear friends on this team. It's like, whoa, what's going on with this roster?
Well, you wonder if Donovan Mitchell was like, okay, cool, we got 5 first-round picks. That doesn't help me right now. Like, if he thought that they were going to trade Rudy Gobert, maybe he was thinking, yeah, look, I don't want to play with Rudy Gobert anymore. But maybe he was thinking that they were going to get players who can help right now, right away. And no disrespect to the Patrick Beverleys and the Vanderbilts and all these guys that they got back for Gobert.
Right.
But that's not necessarily moving the needle for them, right? And those are a lot of kind of 1 year short-term non-guaranteed salaries that Utah could just move off of anyway. So he can't be that happy, Donovan Mitchell. So, and look, it's the worst kept secret in the NBA that whether it happens now or 2 years from now, Donovan Mitchell's not going to finish his career in Salt Lake City. Everybody knows it. And so what's keeping him there other than the fact that he's under contract?
I think I've made this point before, but I can't help but make this kind of parallel between him and what we're seeing playing out with Bradley Beal. And Beal wanted to stay in Washington. And now we're hearing some reporting that he actually has a no trade clause. Like, he cannot be traded from there. And that's just like unbelievable that now he's committed to long-term staying there. And maybe he is just that happy in Washington.
Why would they do that?
Why would they do that?
Include the no trade clause.
I don't know.
Why would Beal push for the no trade clause?
Why? So he could waive it at some point when he's finally frustrated, say, trade me to Miami?
So that he could waive it if and when the trade destination is where he wants to go. You can't now trade Bradley Beal to Sacramento. He's got a no trade clause. You want me to waive that, baby?
Yeah.
You better send me somewhere I want to go, aka Miami.
All right. Well, I mean, that makes sense. Having said that, now all of a sudden Utah with a similar situation in their hands, and Donovan in a similar place in his career where it's like, well, I can commit to this team that's going to be in a perpetual rebuild for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and who knows what we'll probably taste the playoffs again, but we won't go any deeper than we have been. And
I don't even know if that's true.
Yeah,
the West just
right.
got really, really good. I don't know that Utah's better than Sacramento right now.
That's a good point. So, I mean, he has to be feeling frustrated. I keep thinking it's going to happen. That just seems inevitable for these two parties to get together at some point, and this might be just another crucial step in that development. And I know that you kind of last time we talked about whether or not Tyler Herro would be somebody that would be included in a trade for Donovan Mitchell. And then it turns out that Danny Ainge was actually interested in Donovan Mitchell at some point before, right before the draft. Did I say Tyler? Okay, Tyler Herro, yeah. Interested in Tyler Herro before the draft. And so,
yeah, he was reportedly enamored with Tyler Herro, who had like this crazy pre-draft workout for the Celtics when obviously Danny Ainge was in charge of that team. And so, yeah, I thought that Tyler Herro wasn't really the kind of guy that Danny Ainge typically goes for. He usually goes for more of those two-way guys. But apparently he was enamored with Tyler Herro. But also that report came out in the conference finals when Tyler Herro was dropping 37 points on the Celtics. So there maybe was a little bit of revisionist history, kind of cover your bases. Like, oh no, we really wanted this guy, but darn it, the Heat got him one pick before us because the Heat got him at 13 and Boston was picking at 14. And so maybe there's a little bit of revisionist stuff going on there. But we'll see. I think if Utah is going to trade Donovan Mitchell, we've seen what it is that they're looking for. They're looking for a haul of draft picks. They're looking to tear it down just to build themselves back up again.
Yeah, and they're not going to get it. Like we keep arguing this, we keep discussing it. I don't think that there's that kind of huge market for Donovan. Like the teams that might want him don't want to give up those assets in order to get him.
Not right now, at least.
Right, yeah. and not with maybe with a team that's on the verge or looking for just that one extra star and can sacrifice some of those assets. A team like Miami, that's basically it. I mean, they're in it for Kevin Durant, they're in it for Donovan Mitchell, and aside from that, there aren't a lot of teams that are in the same boat as those. So you look at the other teams that are in the rumored hunt for Kevin Durant, who's a very different player than Mitchell, obviously. But Phoenix, they don't need Donovan Mitchell. Toronto, they don't need Donovan Mitchell either.
Nope.
So
New Orleans, even, yeah. I mean, these Portland,
Miami. Miami's. If you're looking at the Euler circles of the teams that want Donovan Mitchell and want Kevin Durant, it's basically Miami. They're the only ones in the middle of both. So
yeah, and the Knicks just signed Jalen Brunson. They were the other team tied with Donovan Mitchell for as long as they were. So
yeah,
you could see maybe Brooklyn trying to get Donovan Mitchell back in some sort of 3-team deal. I know that idea has been out there quite a bit. I have yet to see a deal proposed on Twitter that works, that makes any sense for all sides involved. So I don't know, man. I just know this. We're all waiting to see what happens with Kevin Durant before the other dominoes start to fall here. So this could take a while.
Yeah. Well, we've got all off season, and we'll be here to bring you the latest and greatest news. Whatever might happen with Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, or from anybody in Las Vegas, we'll talk about that throughout the off season. So make sure to subscribe to the show and make sure to make Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your second listen, get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes every day with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA, your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B. Tap the button, people.